Now, like every French, I think I like my onions very much. And I came across that recipe that's using pork chops that are browned in the pan in butter and oil, nicely colored, and that we're going to cook then in the oven covered with an avalanche of caramelized onions. We're talking about 8 onions for 4 pork chops. On top of that, we're going to add some thyme, some sage, and some garlic. And it's all covered in the oven, so we're going to keep the juices infused with the onions. I think it's going to be good. So if you like onions and pork chops, keep watching. Now, as I just said, this dish relies on onions. Now you see there's quite a bit here. About 8 onions chopped. So I'm using a food processor because it's a lot of work if you do it by hand with a knife, but you can. So we're going to need some onions, 4 pork chops. I'm using loin chops and pork cutlets, but you can use whatever you want. And the rest is just a bit of flavoring. Some fresh sage from the garden, garlic, and thyme. All right. So what we're going to do from here, we're going to start by seasoning the chops here and straight into our pan, and we need to give them a nice coloring. To start off the recipe, you're going to take a non-stick pan. We're using this because we're going to have to caramelize the onion in this on a pretty high heat. So take the largest pan you have. I'm using a 28 centimeter, and what you're going to do here is to start with some butter and 1 or 2 tablespoons, I think 1 is enough maybe, of grapeseed oil. You can use another oil, you can use olive oil, but I like something with a high smoking point. Medium to high heat, I'm going to leave this to go up to temperature. Right, so my pan now is heating up. You can do the test of the noise. So, does it make a noise when you put it in? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, a bit better there. So I think we're almost there. So I'm going to wait another minute or so and then in. Now we should be good. Let's see. Ah, that's chanting. Okay, everything in. So nothing special. Just put your chops in there. And we're going to sear the chops on each side to have a nice brown color. Now let me warn you, this recipe is going to yield pork chops that are well done. It's part of the recipe. They're not going to be rosé or pinkish inside. It is made to have chops that are well cooked. One quick advice I can give you, when you make this recipe you want to sear, don't bother turning things around immediately. Just let them sit. Spend a good 5 minutes and wait until there's a coloring, then turn them over. All right, now let's have a look. You want to have a peek inside? Oh, look at these colors. Yummy. Time to turn them over. All right, all done. Now let me tell you just one quick thing about this pan here. I just bought this recently. It's a Le Creuset pan non-stick. And I don't want to brag about the Le Creuset. There's no affiliation here. But honestly speaking, I was looking for a non-stick pan that works, and look at that. I don't need to say anything, you got the proof right here. Non-stick pan, look at the coloring I'm getting. Right, that's all I'm gonna say. Link in the video description if you're interested. If you're looking for a good non-stick, you can't do anything better than that stuff. I got my coloring, I've turned the heat off here, and all what I'm gonna do is put my chops in that roasting pan here. And because we started to cook those, and we're only going to finish them in the oven. But before that, of course, we can make the onions. All right, so next step is to make, of course, the onion and all that juicy, delicious fat that we have, and the butter, the juice from the pork chop, is going to be the base in which we're going to cook our onions. Now, it looks like a lot of onions, but they reduce a lot, okay? So we're going to put them, or try to put them all in there and start. Caramelizing process is on. Now cooking the onions is the process, I think, in that recipe that takes the most time. 15-20 minutes, honestly, it takes a long time. But you see the juice? What we want, and the reason we have this, because I'm going to start bathing my onions and turn them into that juicy goodness and get some color starting in there. You can use a high heat because onions are pretty tough, okay, but let me warn you, it's going to take some time. And so I'm going to first leave them to cook reduce, and I'll show you when I'm halfway or something. Okay, so just to let you know, I'm almost 10 minutes in, and this is going to take a long time. And this is maximum heat. And look at the color. And it starts to take shape but you really want something really, really caramelized. I'm not using any sugar. You could, but what I'm going to do instead is to really season my onions now rather than after. So good grind of salt, pepper, and make sure you taste your onion to have a nice taste that you want. Okay, that's the most important. All right, so stop the clock. It's about 17 to 18 minutes. And this is what we need as a caramelized onion. Do you think this is considered as a caramelized onion? Look at this. Nice and warm. It's got that nice, almost burn aspect. And I think that's what we want. You don't want something too light in color. And that's it. Now back to our pork chop. So as you can see, they're all here. There's a bit of juice in the pan in there. I don't know if you can see it. But all what we need to do here is to cover them. I was talking about an avalanche of caramelized onion. What it is? It's an avalanche. So basically you cover everything with onions. And try to aim for the pork chop if you can. All done, and look at this. This is the aim. We cover the pork chops with a blanket of caramelized onion to avoid drying. Very simple. Now you're going to add a few, like about half a garlic cloves on each chop there. I don't want to be greedy. I've pan-fried them before. All right, beautiful. Then we're going to add some of the sage, very important. So for the sage, just a reminder when I'm thinking about it now, this is the sage. You pluck off the leaf and then you chop it. You mince it in little bits. You don't take the stalks or anything like this, and the result is that. Okay, so same thing here. Little sprinkle. And that's interesting because sage is not something we use all the time actually in cooking. And I've got a big bush of sage at the in-laws and I think it's very practical. Up. And to finish off, guess what we're adding? You would have guessed, butter. There's always butter in French cooking. Up, little piece here, little piece there. Now, if you want to go further, I'm going to put some, it's kind of optional, you can sprinkle some thyme. So you pluck off again from the thyme just the bits of the, you got the branch of thyme, you remove the little leaves, and you add a sprinkle. So that's only if you like thyme, that's optional. You can put a bit on each chop. And we are done. Now look at the result. Just tell me, what do you think in the comment section? I like the little different herbs there and the blanket of caramelized onion covering the chops. It doesn't look like it, but there's a little bit of technique behind. I like this always in this recipe. So from here, basically, we're going to have to finish to cook these chops in the oven. You're going to preheat the oven at 170 degrees Celsius. If it's a fan-forced oven, maybe 180 degrees Celsius. If it's a non-fan-forced, I'll put the equivalent in Fahrenheit on the screen. And you're going to cover this. You can use baking paper or an aluminum foil, again to avoid dryness, and it's going to generate some humidity condensation inside that's going to create a little bit of a juice. And we're going to preserve, again, the humidity. And I think about 30 minutes cooking time, and then that's it, we can serve. Let's go. I have just been summoned by my timer, so I just took the thing out, and let's have a look, let's have a peek inside, let's reveal. Ooh, oh yeah. Actually, look at that. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Eh? Look at this. It's nice. So the butter has kind of melted. It's nice and moist, and there's a nice juice in there. Definitely not dry, and it seems to be nicely cooked. So I've got the color. What do you think? Shall we try it out and dig in and cut a piece? I think so. And now tasting time. So this is it, how it looks like. So you got the chop, you got the onions. We do a little tour around how it looks like. Okay, looks pretty good. I guess the one question we may all have is how dry is that? Because the pork chop has been cooked for a long time. So we've got the bones on here. This is the chop. I'm not even sure which way I should go. There's a piece of fat on there. All right, so I took the liberty of cutting some fat off. You can see that chunk on here so that we can see inside. And ready to, you just slice a piece in here. But it's actually, look at this, it is actually very, very moist. Look at that. And you can just put the onions on there. Boom, have your piece of pork. Yum. Wow. It's simple, but it works. I think that protection of onion really keep that meat really moist. Really something to try. Now, of course, we're finished for the ultimate French experience. If your meat becomes a bit dry, I think it's too dry, you've got these here. You see all the juices? We call that the jus de viande, the meat juices, the natural fat that you can pour over your meat. And that is going to solve any dryness problem on your meat. And that's it, we are all done. This is how you can make that beautiful recipe at home, and you're gonna yield some nice juices in that roasting pan, and honestly this caramelized onion on top really adds something special. I would serve this with potatoes, maybe just even boil or saute potatoes, but I think rice could go quite well. As always, if you have any question regarding that recipe, use the comment section, and don't forget you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, hashtag French Cook Academy, and you can also become a Patreon supporter on my Patreon page. Take care all, and I'll see you all next week for another French recipe. Bye bye.